The world's biggest serial killer might have never been caught if he knew how to operate a computer. Imagine a person who is committing serial killings, but he's also a friend of his victims, a well-known name in the city, and even a doctor. This is the astonishing story of Dr. Harold Shipman, who used his clinic not to save lives, but to take them. In a small town in England called Hyde, where only 30 people lived, he carried on serial killings for 23 years, right under everyone's nose. After killing over 250 people, no one suspected Dr. Harold Shipman, and he might have never been caught if he hadn't made a small mistake. What was the reason behind his killings? Why was he never caught for so long? What evidence did the police find that exposed his decades of murders in an instant? Welcome back to Global Facts, viewers. Let's dive into the story of Dr. Harold Shipman. Dr. Shipman mostly targeted patients who were elderly and lived alone, making it impossible for anyone to suspect foul play. He gave extra time to these patients, visiting them at their homes and listening to their stories. He made them feel that, although they were alone, he was always there to listen. Some patients trusted him so much that they even gave him the keys to their homes. Due to this kindness, he became quite famous in Hyde. People thought Dr. Shipman was simply helping old people through his practice, but in reality, he was using this access to find out who was vulnerable, who was wealthy, and where they lived. Once he had enough information, he would overdose his patients on medicine, killing them. Since most of his patients were over 80, no one ever suspected anything unusual when they passed away. This continued for many years without anyone noticing. It wasn't until he made a small mistake that people began to suspect him. Shipman began his career in Hyde, a town 70 kilometers away from Pontefract, where he worked at a hospital. In 1974, he moved to Todmorden, where he worked as a general practitioner. During this time, he began prescribing high doses of a painkiller called pethidine. Though it was meant to relieve pain, the medicine was highly addictive, and Shipman became addicted to it. He would intentionally prescribe it to his patients, even when they didn't need it. This made them feel better, but little did they know they were getting addicted. His patients trusted him, and many were drawn to him without even realizing the danger. After being caught, the hospital administration removed him from his position, and his medical license was nearly revoked. However, Shipman avoided full consequences, and after spending some time in rehab, returned to Hyde in 1977, where he worked at Donnybrook Medical Center. By 1980, he was practicing as a general practitioner once again, continuing his pattern of addiction and murder. By 1993, the frequency of his killings increased when he opened his own clinic in Hyde, further establishing his reputation in the town. For the next several years, Shipman's killings continued unnoticed, until a breakthrough came in March 1998. Dr. Linda Reynolds, who worked at a hospital opposite Shipman's clinic, noticed an unusually high death rate among his patients. She realized that Shipman's patients were dying at a much higher rate compared to patients at her own hospital. Suspicion grew when she learned that Shipman's 16 patients who had died were not buried but cremated. In many cultures, especially Christian ones, people are usually buried after death, making this cremation unusual. Dr. Linda reported her suspicions to the Manchester coroner, highlighting these patterns. The investigation started, but the police could find no solid evidence. A month later, the investigation was closed. Whenever one of Shipman's patients died, he would sign a form known as Form B, declaring the cause of death as old age. However, he also had many friends in the medical community, which allowed him to have the death certificates signed by others who didn't question him. By doing this, Shipman ensured that the bodies were cremated and any evidence was destroyed, allowing him to cover up his murders. After the investigation was closed, Shipman continued his killings, with his last victim being 81-year-old Kathleen Grundy, the former mayor of Hyde. Kathleen died in her home on June 24, 1998. Shipman was the last person to see her alive. Afterward, he signed her death certificate, citing old age as the cause. Kathleen's daughter, Angela Woodruff, who was a lawyer, grew suspicious after finding her mother's will. The will left her house to Dr. Shipman, which seemed unusual since her mother owned 2 homes, yet only one was mentioned in the will. Angela believed that the will was fake and likely written by Shipman himself. She went to the police, who reopened the investigation. Kathleen Grundy's body was exhumed and autopsied. The results showed lethal doses of diamorphine, a form of heroin, in her system. When the police questioned Shipman, he claimed that Kathleen had been a drug addict, and he had recorded this in his computerized medical journal. But he didn't realize that the computer automatically saved the last edited date of the file, which proved his involvement. The police also discovered a typewriter used to forge the fake will. The characters on Shipman's typewriter matched the missing characters in Kathleen's will. On September 7, 1998, Dr. Harold Shipman was arrested. Once the news broke, other families of his victims came forward sharing their suspicions. Police investigated 15 more of Shipman's patients, and they found a disturbing pattern. Each one had received a lethal dose of diamorphine, and their death certificates were forged. And the investigation revealed that Shipman had killed 218 patients from 1,975 patients until his arrest, though the real number could be as high as 260. In court, Shipman was convicted of 15 murders. While in prison, Shipman used a bedsheet to hang himself. After his death, one of his cellmates claimed that Shipman had confessed to killing 508 people. The exact reasons for Shipman's killings remain unclear. Some say he was a psychopath. Others believe it was a way for him to make money, while some think his mother's death influenced his actions. Experts speculate that Shipman may have killed his patients by giving them morphine in an attempt to relive his mother's death. We hope you enjoyed this video by Global Facts. Don't forget to like and share. Thank you for your kind comments, and we'll see you in the next video.